During welcome week of my freshman year, I was buying my school books from one of those outside mobile bookstores. Not important to the story, really, but I guess it's notable that my college's student union was under renovation at the time, and there were a lot of portable buildings to walk between. Anyway, I had just finished buying my books, and I was walking to the bus stop to go back to my dorm. I was struggling with one of the bags because the crappy plastic had broke around one of the handles when a guy came out of nowhere and started talking to me about it. He was bigger than me and kept trying to make conversation, but he didn't seem to get the vibe that I wanted to be left alone. I was super uncomfortable around strangers in this town at the time because I had just come from a rural part of Oklahoma and wasn't used to large crowds. After kind of nodding and going along with whatever he said for a moment while I waited for my bus, I was really kind of over it. I remember at some point he was telling me that he felt really comfortable talking to me because I reminded him of some of the girls he talked to in his hometown. He was a freshman from a rural town too, it seemed. Needless to say, I was relieved when my bus came and he watched me board it from the sidewalk. Chalked it up to a first week thing. My campus was huge. I'd never see him again, right? Well, fast forward a week when I've gone to a few classes. I'm kind of familiar with where the buildings are. I was getting myself some lunch at one of the makeshift portable cafeterias when I thought I heard someone trying to get my attention. It's packed, but I somehow get my food in a decent amount of time. As I was checking out, I saw a guy waving at me, although I didn't fully recognize him until I was staring for a while. Remembering the guy from last week, I suspected it was him trying to get my attention. I located my nearest exit, again, because it was weird how enthusiastically he was waving at me. There were a ton of people there for lunch, plus I just wanted to find my classroom and still eat my lunch. I gave him a short wave, just so I wasn't flat out ignoring him, and I began walking to the door. Once outside, I start to leg it to my next classroom building, rationalizing that maybe the guy wasn't the same dude and it was someone else who had mistaken me for someone else. At this time, I'd already met a few people who told me I looked like someone else they knew, so maybe it was one of those times it was not. Lo and behold, the dude had also just left the cafeteria portable and was following my path behind me toward the classroom building, which, I'll admit, was a common one, but something told me he was trying to catch up. I resume life as normal, telling myself whatever, maybe he has class here too, and I'm just being paranoid. I continue to my classroom and sit outside the door, figuring maybe he hadn't seen what floor I'd gone to, and I could eat in peace. I'm just about to dig into my sandwich when dude rounds the corner and starts making his way to me. Before he even got a chance to speak, I gathered my stuff and started getting up. He started talking to me, saying he just wanted to talk and wanted to make friends, which, I'll admit, made me feel bad. I told him I'm sorry, but I'm just here to eat lunch and go to class. I also remember feeling the need to say that I had a boyfriend, which I did at the time, although he lived an hour away. Although in retrospect, I don't know if he even had an interest like that for me. Either way, dude gave me weird vibes, and I felt like a jerk for a long time. I guess I still do when I consider that dude may have just been lonely or awkward and wanted to confide in me because I looked like a type of person he was comfortable with. But still, dude following me from one building to another to watch me eat lunch just didn't sit well with me. Anyway, I never saw him again after that, no.
I work at a preschool that is in a very old Catholic school building. We are not a Catholic school, or affiliated with the church at all. We just rent the building from the church. But we are on the church grounds and right next door to a cemetery. It is still a functioning cemetery, but it dates back to the early 1800s. So anyway, in the 1950s, the school building was the Catholic school. It's a fairly small building with a large gymnasium. That has a stage for performances and other things. During the 50s, an 8-year-old girl suffered a brain aneurysm in the parking lot and died on the spot. She is buried in the cemetery next door. She is one of the ghosts that is there, and we call her Mary. Now, every person that I have ever worked with there has had some sort of experience with at least one of the spirits, but mainly it's Mary. A few years back, when we did bus service for the kids, we had a lady bus driver. Once she would get to the school and the kids would go to class, she would go into the break room and read the newspaper and have breakfast. One day she came out of the break room, and something caught her eye, so she turned to look, and sitting on a low shelf in the hallway They are short shelves with hooks for the kids to hang their coats up. Was a girl with a long, light-colored dress on and long hair just looking at her. Then vanished. This woman was so moved by seeing this spirit. She instantly called her mother to tell her she saw her guardian angel that day. I have personally had toys move around the room during nap time. I have heard kids running around and laughing on the stage when the gym is dark and the stage curtains are drawn. One time when I was the opener and was there at 6:30 a.m. with 3 kids for the day. So far I had the kids with me in the office to make coloring page copies and heard footsteps with keys jingling coming down the hallway. I poked my head out to see if someone had come into the building that I hadn't realized, but no one was there. I could clearly hear the steps and the jingling get closer, then go past the doorway of the office. Then they just stopped in front of the janitor closet. About 6 months before this happened, the janitor of the school who had worked there for over 15 years had passed away. I like to think it was them just there to do their job like they always did. I have counted extra feet in bathroom stalls when counting the kids. Other ladies have seen a girl spinning in circles, singing in a room that no one was in and the lights were off. One time another lady was opening for the day, and she had just gotten to the school. It was winter, so it was still very dark when she got there at 6:15 a.m. She got into the building and had started opening the classrooms up when she heard a loud noise come from the office, like someone knocked something over, so she went into a class, locked the door, and called the director, who told her to get out of the building and call the police. So that's what she did. The police come and go into the office, do a full sweep of the school, confirm there is no one in the building, but ask her to come into the office. When she gets to the office, there is paperwork and books, folders, etc., all over the place. She said it looked like someone had gone in there and just threw everything from the desk all over the place. No one could understand what had happened. Another time, we had a tornado actually touch down on the roof of the school, tearing that section of the roof clean off. No one was hurt. Everyone in the school was able to get to safety before the tornado came down. For a solid week prior to this happening, the director kept seeing the old father of the church, who had passed years ago, all over the school. Once the tornado hit, she said she believed he was coming there to warn everyone of the upcoming events and trying to protect his school. We have watched kids play and speak to someone or something that is not there. One time a girl of around 4 years old played and pretended to feed someone who was not there, holding a full conversation by herself, and during it she kept looking up to the ceiling and then back down in front of her. It went on for about 30 minutes. When we asked her who she was playing with, she just said totally normal, "My friend." Most recently in my room, I have a special needs child who is mostly nonverbal. He does speak, but not too much unless he really wants to. The other day we had the door to the classroom open and he kept walking in front of it and stopping to look out at something. So I asked him, "Hey buddy, what are you looking at out there?" And he turns to me and says, clear as day, "There's a ghost right there, and it's scary." I asked him, "Where did you see the ghost?" He says, "Out there and on the ceiling." Everyone who works there know of the spirits who stay there, and they have never been scary. A little spooky sometimes, but never scary. We just learn to work with them and around them if need be. And if I ever open or close the building, I always am sure to say hello to them when I walk in and goodbye when I leave. The high school I attended was said to be haunted by a girl who had been pushed off of the bell tower and broke her neck, causing her to pass away instantly as she hit the ground. Before it was turned into a modern-day high school, I believe it was an all-girls boarding school. Strangely enough, I cannot find a lot of information on the building, which would have been around the time when this unfortunate event happened. There were a few small stories circulating about the school being haunted, but alas, they could have been rumors and completely made up. However, I had an experience of my own that made me believe them to be true. I'll start with one of the stories I heard from others. Either a teacher or a student, I forget which, needed a guide dog or a therapy dog which they would bring into the school with them. However, the dog would refuse to go anywhere near the stairwell which led to the bell tower. It would whine and try to back up and wouldn't go towards the bottom end of the second floor ICT corridor, which is where the doors lead out to the stairwell. It's also where I had my own experience. I'd also like to add that there is no longer a bell in the bell tower. It wasn't there when I first started at the school, and it still isn't there to this day. I believe it was removed and the door leading up to it was sealed shut, meaning even if we ascended the stairs to it, we wouldn't be able to get much further than that, said flight of stairs. Now onto my own experience. It was lunchtime, and I'd taken a shortcut through the maths corridors and turning right onto the ICT corridor on the second floor towards the door that leads to the stairwell. One set of stairs lead down to a small foyer and the canteen on the right, and the other set of stairs lead up towards the sealed-off bell tower. As I was walking along the ICT corridor, I realized that it was awfully quiet. No one was around, no teachers or students whatsoever. It was so quiet my ears rung. A set of footsteps joined me and were walking behind me about halfway along the corridor. I thought it must have been another student, so I didn't bother turning around to look who it was. I just wanted to get to lunch. I got to the doors, which are big, heavy wooden doors that don't stay open on their own. They need to be pushed with quite some force and latched onto a heavy-duty magnet that holds them open until you press a button to release them. The amount of times I was smacked in the face by these things is astounding. So I get to the doors and I push one of them open, not bothering to latch it to the magnet on the wall, thinking that the person walking behind me will just catch it as I let go and walk through it down to the canteen for lunch too. As I began walking down the set of stairs to the canteen, I suddenly stopped mid-step. Something didn't feel right, and I realized the doors hadn't made the noise they do when they slam shut and the footsteps had stopped at the door. I waited for someone to pass me on the stairs, but nobody did, so I turn around slowly, and the door I walked through is stood open on its own, without being latched onto the magnet. It was ajar, far enough open that I could see down the corridor, but not quite far enough for it to catch the magnet and stay open. And the student I thought was walking behind me is nowhere to be seen, even though I could have sworn up and down they were right behind me, as their footsteps weren't even that far away. Before I could even gasp, the door shuts. Slowly, as if someone was holding it open and then shut it slowly and gently so it wouldn't make a noise. I literally couldn't get out of there quick enough, and I turned and ran down the rest of the steps. I never took that shortcut alone again, and always made sure I went the long way around if no one was with me. What was even more weird to me was the fact that it felt as if someone were watching me and this whole event unfold. Creepy. I have many stories of ghost experiences, but one college story that spanned over 2 years. I was on FaceTime with my, now former roommate once while we were all home for the holidays. They said they heard something weird in their attic and decided to investigate despite me, who has always lived in a haunted house, advising them not to. They did anyway. They then began texting me all the time, complaining about seeing and hearing things. I told them to tell it to go away. They didn't, and named the entity. 2 days later, we were back in our apartment. My partner, who lived with us, began complaining about hearing my voice, or my roommate's voice, while he showered. I began to hear it too, but with my roommate's voice only. Late at night, I would hear my roommate's closet door open and slam shut, hear their laughter until I texted them, asking them to politely quiet down, as I had a class the night day. They sent me a Snapchat of them at work and asked me in complete confusion what I was talking about. We didn't have neighbors since the rooms next to us had been vacant, and the new tenants weren't moving in for another few weeks on either side. So I got up and went into my roommate's room. Their closet door was wide open, but otherwise everything looked normal. COVID hit, and my roommate couldn't justify staying in the apartment when the lease came to an end, especially since the rest of the school was closed for the foreseeable future. They moved out while my partner and I apartment hunted because we didn't want to go back to living with our parents. We found a place and quickly moved in, smaller than our last place. I began to have sleep paralysis. I heard my former roommate's voice and my partner's voice whenever I showered. My partner mentioned the same thing. We had the same encounters, but with each other's voices, we would hear the locked bathroom door open and shut and the call of our names. We would always respond and then peek out the shower curtain to see the door is still closed and locked. Many sleepless nights together there and other reasons caused us to move out again. Our lease was broken early on fault of the apartment building declining to tell us they were allowing a rooftop bar share a wall with us and said, "We can give you a coupon to the bar," which in our lease was a break of trust on their end, legally allowing us to move out without penalty. My partner's parents allowed us to stay in their lake house while we searched for a new place. since it was close to where I worked and close enough to the school. But again, we had the same problems of hearing voices when alone. I remember our bedroom door was closed, and I awoke to a loud banging and someone yelling at us to wake up. I thought it might have been my partner's mother, since the voices sounded like a muffled version of hers. I woke up and my partner had told me no one was there, and that before closing the door, after I'd gone to bed, they saw a figure run from their sister's room and into their parents' room, completely freaking us out. Our final move for college was a week later, and we didn't have any problems with that entity again. That had to have been the most malicious feeling one I've ever experienced. Like I said, I have tons of ghost stories, but none have ever copied voices of those I know and love before.